Hello everybody, welcome to Sane Game Studios. I'm Sane, I'm an amateur game developer. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to animate your player. Specifically, this is actually going to be building off of what I did in my platformer movement tutorial. But I actually had a viewer request that I go a little bit more depth into the animation. And that is awesome. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see viewers not only watching the videos, but also commenting on the videos and then also being like, hey, could you elaborate on this some more? Like, that is great. If you guys have anything that I talk about you would like me to go more in depth on, or if you have like a certain tutorial that you would like to see, please let me know. If it's something that I know how to do, I will quickly throw a tutorial together for how to do it. If it's something that I don't know how to do, I will learn how to do it and then do a tutorial on it. If it's something I have to learn, please be patient. It may take me some time to put it together. In this case, it's something that I know how to do, and I'm just quickly throwing together a tutorial, and I'm going to be posting this like 5 days after today, which is the day that I am recording it. But essentially, I'm going to be starting off super basic. I only have a couple objects here. I have my OGame object, and the only thing my OGame object is just closes my game whenever I hit backspace. That's something that I program into all my games. It's not always backspace, but I always do have a game end button just in case anything goes wrong. I can always just force the game to close. I also have an OWall object that doesn't have any kind of code whatsoever, but it ties into my collision movements with my OPlayer object. So my OPlayer object, I'm going to go over this just a little bit with you guys. So my OPlayer object and my create event, I am creating a I'm establishing a handful of variables. So I have my player input variables. I have my movement speed variables. I have my gravity variable. And then I have these two booleans. Boolean is just a fancy term for something that toggles between true and false. And I'm going to be tying those to my animations. Grounded is also tied to my jumping, but I will show you guys how exactly I'm doing that. So the only other event that I have in this object is my step event. I'm going to be going over it really quickly with you guys. I have key up, key down, key left, key right, and I'm getting my player inputs. I am calculating whether or not I should be moving. I am calculating how quickly and in what direction I should be moving. I am checking for collisions with the wall, and if I am colliding with the wall, I am setting my horizontal speed to 0. Also, I'm doing a pixel perfect collision, which means that if my horizontal speed will collide with the wall, I still move towards the wall 1 pixel at a time in that direction until I make a perfect collision with the wall. And then finally, I am updating my X position. Down here, I'm doing my vertical movement. So the first thing I am doing is I am just adding gravity to my vertical movement. If I am standing on a wall, so Y plus VSB collides me with the wall, I'm setting my VSP to 0, and I am telling the game that I am grounded. Otherwise, I am setting grounded to false. If I am not grounded, and my VSP is above 0, and again, I know I went over this in the previous video, but my VSP is vertical movement, and that goes along the y-axis, and everything always originates in the top left corner of the room. So as you move downwards, then you are going up, and that is positive in the y-axis. So visually, if you're moving up, you are actually going down in the y value. It's a little confusing, and it took me a little bit to wrap my head around it as well. But it eventually just gets normal. So if my VSP, so my vertical speed is below 0, then that means that is greater than 0, then that means I am falling, because that means that I am not on the ground, and I am moving positively in the y-axis, which means I'm moving downwards. If I am not grounded, and my VSP is 0 or less, I am saying that I am not falling, because that means that I'm either moving upwards on the y-axis, or that means that I have hit 0 and I am not moving at all on the y-axis, which at the apex of your jump, that will be true for a single frame. Otherwise, if I am grounded, I am setting my falling to false because I am tying an animation to falling, and I do not want my animation to continue while I am grounded. And then other than that, I'm telling you that if I am grounded and I hit the up key, so up key equals true, I am minusing 7 off my VSP. And then finally, I am updating my Y position. And then if I run that, here I go. I'm able to jump around. I'm able to move left and right. Another thing is in my step event up at the very top, I've set all my movement, all my input variables to keyboard check, except for key up. I set that to keyboard check pressed. And there's a reason for that, is because this will only return true for the single frame in which I actually am, which I first press this button. Other than that, it's going to return it false, no matter how long I press it. And that is actually very important. I'm going to show you what happens if I just do input check. Well, keyboard check. Right, so this just means that if I hold the button, what happens is every time I touch the ground, I'm just going to immediately jump, which is something that maybe you want. It's just not something that I would like. Honestly, I thought this was going to look more ridiculous than it did, but I forgot that I set grounded as a condition for when I press it. So I actually expect it to fly way up in the air. Whereas if I were to move this, and let's say I were to put it here, that is exactly what would happen. See? It is going to come back down. It may take a while. Oh, actually. Oh, there it is. There it went. And it was moving so fast, it actually didn't even do the collision. So it is very important that you always put some kind of condition for your jumping. I usually don't tie it directly to grounded. I'll usually have a jump buffer, which means that if I am grounded, like if grounded equals true, I will set the jump buffer to 0, and then if grounded equals... I'll set the jump buffer to, like, let's say 10. And then if grounded equals false, I will minus 1 off the jump buffer. And then as long as the jump buffer is above 0, then I can still jump. And that allows players to, like, if they are trying to do a running jump off of an edge or something, they have a little bit of a buffer. Or if they jump just like a frame too late, they can still jump. And if you don't put this in, actually players are going to think that your game is unfair. Because all games should have a little bit of leeway, and generally speaking, you should always side with the player. You're much better off to make things a little bit easier, to make things better on the player, than you are to make things extremely unforgiving. But that's neither here nor there. Today I'm actually going to be mostly covering just animations. So as you can see in my project, it is just a little green square. And nobody wants to play as just a little green square. Like, okay, so there are games where you just play as colored squares, but most games, you're going to want to actually be like a bit of a tangible player and not just a little green square walking around on little blue things. So I'm going to be getting in depth as to how to do animations. And actually the most important thing to think of is, you know what, I'm just going to cover that once I actually have my sprites in. So I'm going to go to sprites, and I'm going to create a new group, actually. Create group. And I'm going to call this group player sprites. And now I'm going to start importing my sprites. I'm going to walk you guys through how I'm going to import the first one, but then after that, I'm just going to jump forward and I'm just going to import all of my sprites. So I'm just going to go sprite. I'm going to go to the sprite editor here. And I'm just going to click import. And here are the sprites that I'm going to use for my character. So the biggest thing that I'm going to want to do is the first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to import my idle sprite. And one thing that's actually very important is, as you see here at the end of my sprite name, I have underscore strip 11. And that's, I actually legitimately just counted it. It didn't have it at first. If you look in no weapon hurt, you can see it's got 3 sprites, but I've never actually used that animation, so I never did this. But it has 11 frames. And if you put underscore strip and then the amount of frames, then GameMaker will actually split it into a playable animation. So let's say you have your animation and it just looks like this. Character, no weapon, idle, whatever it's called, right? But I can tell right here, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It's 11 frames. I know that for sure. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go to its name and I'm going to change its name and I'm going to say strip 11. And then once I have it named that, I'm going to open it to import it. And as you can see, it immediately brings it in. Oh. This is actually not the idle sprite that I want. That is the alternative idle. I want the strip 8 one, which is, again, same, just it's going to immediately split it into its 8 frames. And then if I play it, he's going to start bobbing. But if you had a player that was just standing there idle and they were doing this, that would look ridiculous. And that's where the FPS comes in handy. So I'm actually going to change the frames per second to a lower value. If you change it to a higher value, it's going to move even quicker. And again, just looks ridiculous. So I'm going to set this to 10 and see how it looks. And in my opinion, still a little bit fast. I'm going to set it to 8. See, I think that looks good. Still has a bit of movement. It's not nearly as extreme, but it is still moving and it is showing the player that the game is still active, it's still working, nothing's going wrong. If you're playing a game and you see 0 movement, your first thought's going to be, oh my god, it froze. But if you move in like you move and it's not frozen, but you'll still have that thought. It is always good to have some kind of animation tied to something on your screen at all times. So that way a player can look at a screen and know immediately whether or not the game is frozen. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to rename this. I'm going to call it S for sprite. I'm going to go player idle. And then I'm going to skip this next part, but I'm going to import a few more animations. Okay, so I've imported a few more animations. I imported this one, which is for jumping. It also defaulted to 15 FPS just through trying out different numbers and playing it. I've decided on 8. Animation of him walking, which I have set to 12 FPS. But this might change. Like if I walked him at a faster rate, I would want him to walk faster. So if I had my walk speed set higher, I would set my FPS higher so that it kind of looked like his feet were actually moving in tandem with how he was moving along the ground. That's a bit of a balancing act. I did the falling, set that to 12 FPS. And then I figured I would show you guys running as well. So here's him running, also set to 12 FPS. All right, so S player run, S player fall, S player walk, and S player jump. as well as sPlayer idle. So now, how do we use these? So what I normally do is, I know some people actually create a script for sprite assignment, but I usually build it right into my code, whether I be doing a step event code like this or whether I be building a state machine. If you don't know what state machines are, they are a great tool. And if you can either A, look up what state machines are and how to build them, or B, comment it down below and I will do a tutorial on how to begin building a state machine and how they work. I know that when I followed Sarah Spalding's tutorial for state machines, I got a little bit lost in the script execute function, but I figured it out. I'm not saying the tutorial is outdated. I'm just saying that with slightly older tutorials, you are going to come into a few bumps and you're going to have to figure out how they work on the modern GameMaker. But the way that I'm going to do it here, I'm building everything right into my step event. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to default my sprite to idle. So I'm going to go sprite index equals sPlayer idle. And if I were to run that right now, there I am. But no matter what I do, I'm always going to be idle. Actually, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my room. I'm going to move my player up. I'm going to move that up. And then if you were watching my tutorial on viewports and cameras, you will understand exactly what I'm doing here. Oh. I'm, as you can see, not animating. Shrugs his shoulders, he stands there. But he does have an image of a player. So, what we're going to do we are going to code in what sprite I should be using and what animation I should be using on the given condition. So this all comes down to just what is coding, right? So really what I have here is I have my baseline. So I'm saying that the sprite index is sPlayer idle, and I'm telling it to always be playing that sprite. But by the end of the frame, I'm going to be saying, because it's going to be running all of this code every frame, by the end of the frame, I'm going to be like, if this condition is true, play this sprite. If this condition is true, play that sprite. If this condition is true, play this other sprite. And then if none of these conditions are true, use the idle sprite. And that is why I just hard code the sprite index as sPlayer idle, is so that if none of the conditions are met and it doesn't know what sprite to play, it will just automatically play sPlayer idle. So the first thing actually we're going to do is we're going to do our walking animation. So I actually usually do this at the very bottom of the code. So I'll put a comment here and I'll just be like, animate the player. So when I'm talking about like if this condition is true, use this sprite instead, we got to figure out what those conditions are going to be. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing the walking sprite. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be telling it, if you are walking, use the walking sprite. But how do we tell it that we're walking? We tell it that we are walking by using the HSP variable. Because I use HSP, I calculate what direction it should be moving in, and then my HSP equals my walk speed times the direction, and then I am moved by my HSP. So if HSP equals 0, then I am not moving, and if it equals anything other than 0, then I am moving. So down here, I'm going to say if HSP does not equal 0. And I'm going to open up some curly brackets because there's a little bit here. So if grounded equals true, sprite index equals sPlayer walk. And that's all I need to do in order to animate it as walking. Actually, if I play that now, as you can see, he's animated as walking. But also, as you can see, if I move to the left, that does not look proper whatsoever. And there's actually a very easy way that we can do this. We do not need a separate sprite for walking to the left. And actually, most sprite sheets are only going to give you a sprite for walking to the right. But GameMaker has this thing built in called image X scale. And X scale, it draws like an imaginary line down the middle of your sprite, and then X scale adjusts the width of your sprite. So like if I were to set my image X scale to 2, image X scale equals 2, see, he is all of a sudden much fatter. But then also, I can use it to flip the sprite. So if I set the image X scale to -1, he is facing to the left. That doesn't work either because now he is walking backwards when we move to the right. So we need to tell it which direction to have the sprite animate in, depending on the direction in which we are walking. And there is a very simple function we can use for this. So there's this thing built in. Actually, I'm going to put this just down here. I'm going to say image X scale equals sine HSP. And sine is very useful. Sine is, it will always return either a 0 or a -1. Actually, I'm going to put that in here. So sine's always either going to return a -1, a 0, or a 1, and it depends on the value of the value that you feed it. So if the value that I feed it is below 0, sine will always return a -1. Even if the HSP is, -3000, the sine of HSP will be -1. And then if it is 0, the sine will be 0. And then if it is, if it's above 0, the sine will be 1. So what this will do is that if we are moving in the positive direction to the right, our image X scale is going to be 1, and we will be facing to the right. But if we are moving in the negative direction, which is the left, our HSP is actually going to be below 0, and then it will return a -1, and it will flip our image to look to the left. And then if we are not moving at all, sine HSP is actually going to be 0, which would make it so that you can't see your sprite whatsoever. But I am only calling this function if HSP does not equal 0. And what that's going to do is that if you stop moving, image X scale will retain its previous value. And I'll show you how that works. So here I am looking to the right, and if I move to the right, I'm walking to the right, and then if I stop moving, I'm still looking right. Then if I move to the left, I face to the left, and if I stop moving, I continue facing to the left. But then if I want to look right, all I gotta do is hit the right key, and boom, I start looking right again. And that is because the image X scale is saving its last value from the last time that your horizontal speed did not equal 0. And that is how you get some natural looking flipping on your character. But as you can see, when I jump, it's just the idle animation, and that is not what we want. So down here, I'm going to say if grounded equals false. And actually another way to do this, instead of saying if grounded equals false, I can also go exclamation mark grounded, if not grounded. And that's normally how I do that. This and this are the exact same thing. Also, both of these are the exact same thing. Anyways, so if I am not grounded, and up here, I already programmed in whether or not I am falling. And this is exactly why I did this, is I can say if I am not grounded, and if I am falling, so if falling equals true, I'm going to set my sprite index to equal s player fall. Otherwise, else, so that is going to mean that if I am not grounded and I am not falling, my sprite index is going to equal s player jump. Okay, but now that we have that, I also imported a run animation. I'm going to show you guys how to do that. So back in my create event where I have walk speed equals 4, I'm going to create a new variable and I'm going to call it run speed, and I'm going to have it equal 8. Actually, 8 seems a little bit hectic. I'm going to have it equal 7. I'm going to go back to my step event. I'm going to create a new input, declare a new input. I'm going to go key run equal false. And then here, I'm going to go key run equals keyboard check. I'm not going to use keyboard check pressed. I'm just going to use keyboard check. And I'm going to set it to VK shift. And then here, instead of walk speed, I'm going to do a local variable and I'm going to call it speed. And then here, I'm going to go var speed equals 0. And I'm going to say if key run equals true, speed equals run speed. And then else, so if key run does not equal true, I'm going to set speed to equal walk speed. And then way down here, where I have if grounded equals true, I'm going to put that in some curly brackets. And then I'm going to say if key run sprite index equals s player run, else sprite index equals s player walk. So if I'm holding down the run key, I will be moving faster and I'll set my sprite to run. And if I am not holding the run key, my sprite will be set to walk. And then up at the top here, I am calculating my movement speed based off whether or not I am running. Because if var speed equals 0, if key run, speed equals run speed. If not key run, speed equals walk speed. And then when I calculate my movement, I'm going speed times move. So if I hit F5 now, and I run this, look, I run. Walk, 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 run. Walk, 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 run. Walk, 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 run. Walk, 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 run. See, all of a sudden the player looks like it has some life to it. And I try to go a little bit more in depth, because I know I covered animation on my platformer movement tutorial, but I tried to go a little bit more in depth and tried to explain it a little bit better in this one. But essentially all that I am doing is I am setting a baseline for my sprite, and then down at the bottom here, I'm setting conditions for when to use different sprites. And that's all that really coding really is like, if this, then that. And like, I'm saying, if this, then that. But if not, but this, do that. Same thing I'm doing down here. Right? If I'm not on the ground, so if this, but also if this, do that. But if this and not this, do that. Right? And like, that's what I've always used for animating my player. I have always set a baseline to be like, this is the sprite that the player is. And then, if this condition is met, instead do this sprite. And then also use my horizontal movement to do my image X scale. This does not work for top-down games. This simple thing right here, it does not work for top-down games for vertical movement, but it still works for horizontal movement. But if you're moving up, you are looking at the back of the player, and if you're moving down, you're looking at the face of the player. So it doesn't work for vertical movement, but it does work in all cases for horizontal movement, and it is a very, very useful tool. You will actually have to do separate sprite assignments for vertical movement if the top-down game, but you would do the same thing that you do here. Instead of saying if falling, you would be like if moving down. And if your vertical speed is greater than 0, you are moving down. So if you are moving down, sprite index equals s player walk down. And then if you are not moving down, sprite index equals s player walk up. Right? So it's not super complicated. I did have a lot of trouble with animating sprites when I first got into game development, but this is a really quick crash course on not only how to get your player animated, but also how to approach it in your mind for what it is you want it to do. So like I said, you set a baseline and you tell your player, I always want you to be playing this sprite. And then before the frame is over, have calculations, set conditions, and be like, if these conditions are met, however, play this sprite instead. And then, with your baseline, if none of these conditions are met, run this sprite. Because if I set a condition for this sprite, like let's say I were to say if HSP equals 0, sprite index equals S player idle, it would work absolutely fine. But if at any point in time none of the conditions were met, not even for my idle sprite, just by some fluke, none of them were met, it would resort to this green square. And that is the last thing that I want the player to see. But it is also possible where I can just go here and I can set my player sprite to be S player idle. And that is almost the same thing as setting a baseline, but I always still set the baseline. But yeah, that's in a nutshell. You just want to set a baseline for your sprite and like a default sprite. Tell your game, this is always the sprite that I want you to, always the animation that I want you to be playing. And then give it conditions for exceptions. And it is important to keep your conditions manageable. Oh, like here I have if falling. And then I programmed my falling in here. When I first started in game development, I never would have thought to have a Boolean, a true or false, that I toggle whether or not I am falling. But now I know how useful something simple like that is. And then when it comes to processing power, quickly changing a variable takes almost none. Like, it is infinitesimally small. You are not going to lose frame rates because you are changing a Boolean. But yeah, I think that's all I really have for today. Again, big shout out to the viewer. I can't remember his name off the top of my head while I'm recording, but I'm going to print it on the screen right here. Big shout out to him for not only wanting further clarification, but also letting me know that helps me. Sometimes I don't know what I'm going to do for a video next, and it's really nice when I have some viewer input, just being like, hey man, I would like to learn more about this, or hey man, you haven't done a video on this yet. Would you mind, showing us what you know? And like I said, if it's something that I don't know, I will learn it for you guys so I can show you. But yeah, that's all that I really have. Thank you so much for watching. Big shout out to the viewer. And I hope that this clarified any questions that you had, bro. But yeah, with that, I'm going to say please like and subscribe. It really helps out my channel. And I hope to see you guys next time on my next video, and I hope to hear more from you. So again, thank you very much, and peace out.